Today, let us understand the basic anatomy of a car engine. Now, I know there are a lot more parts inside a car engine than what I'm going to draw here, but instead of overwhelming ourselves with every single component, let's focus on some of the most important parts and understand how they work together. So, let's build this engine from inside out. First, let us start by drawing the heart of the engine, and it is the cylinders. And these are the spaces where the pistons move up and down, and where combustion takes place. And then inside each cylinder, we have a piston, and there are rings around the piston that I drew, which are known as piston rings. They help, seal the gap between the piston and the cylinder wall, so the gases produced during combustion don't escape. And then we have the connecting rod, and we have crank. So connecting rod, basically, it what it does is it connects each piston to the crank. And then the crank, each piston has its own crank, and these cranks are connected together through a crankshaft. And this is our crankshaft. And after that, the piston moves up and down, and the crank rotates. Now, coming on to the crank, it looks like this, like a basic view of crank. And then we have the top of the cylinder, we have valves, and there are intake valves and exhaust valves. And then they are connected to springs. These springs help return the valves to their closed position after they are opened. And we have cam, follower, and slider on top of that. And then, this is basically connected to a shaft which is known as a camshaft. And the camshaft, the timing of the camshaft is controlled by something called a timing belt or a timing chain. So the crankshaft and the camshaft have to work together perfectly. So this timing belt is something that does that work. And also, this makes sure that the valves open and close at exactly the right time relative to the piston. And now we have the lower section where we have oil pan and oil system and all of that. Oil pan, oil filters, and all of that we have. And then the intake and the exhaust manifolds we have. So the manifold is basically like, uh, you know instead of giving every cylinder its own completely separate intake system, we use an intake manifold. And it basically has a plenum and all runners. So yeah, after that, we have a basic view of a cross section of an engine. Now let's start naming the parts one by one. We have the camshaft, the intake valve, we have the exhaust valve, and then the piston rings and piston. Towards the bottom, we have oil pan, which stores the engine oil. And after that, we have the timing belt, or we can also call it as the timing chain. Then we have the connecting rod and the crankshaft. We have the crank, and also we have a cooling jacket. Let's understand about each part separately. And we have intake, exhaust, manifolds, and we have the cylinder, which is the most basic part of an engine. And let's understand each and every part separately now. First of all, talking about camshaft, it controls the opening and closing of the valves. Then coming on to the intake and exhaust manifolds, basically it manages the airflow. And manifold is nothing but a pipe or a chamber like thing which branches into several openings. And we have the intake and exhaust valves, where the air comes in and exhaust gases move out. And then we have piston rings, These are used for three main reasons: gas sealings and heat transfer and oil regulation. We also have the piston, which moves up and down and completes the four strokes inside a cylinder. And we have a timing belt or a timing chain, which synchronizes the rotation of crankshaft and camshaft. Then we have the connecting rod, which connects piston to crankshaft, and the crankshaft converts reciprocating motion of the pistons into rotational motion. So basically, the up and down motion of the piston is getting converted into rotational motion by a crankshaft, and we have the crank, which is like a mechanical arm attached to the crankshaft. Then we have the cylinder, which is the central working chamber where we have the piston moving up and down. And we have cooling jacket, which is nothing but, it circulates the coolant around cylinders to absorb and dissipate heat. And then we have the oil pan and oil filter. Oil pan stores engine oil, and oil filter removes contaminants from the engine oil.